Hello, hello, lovely humans, and welcome to another Full Life Counseling or FLC Skill Shot. Today we're going to be talking about boundaries, and this is going to be a companion or complementary piece to the relationship series that's going to be streaming soon in your Full Life podcast. My name is Dana Strickland, and don't forget that you can find us online, the Facey Spacey, and the Instagram at Full Life Counseling AZ, online at www.full-lifellc.com, and you can check out our online shop at shopflc.ecwid.com. So when we are talking about boundaries, there's a bunch of different ways to be thinking about that. Usually when we're talking about a boundary, we're thinking in terms of physical space. And I know that boundaries is a buzzword right now, so a lot of people might be using it. A lot of people might be misusing it. So we're talking about a boundary in terms of where one thing ends and another thing begins. So again, with our easy example of physical space, some people might like arm's length, some people might prefer greater than arm's length. And a lot of that even then will depend on who that person is to you, how much you trust them, and what your ideas even culturally are around personal space, as well as our experiences. How safe is it for someone to be close to us physically? But those are the easy ones. So if someone goes out and keyed my car, I can go point at that. There's damage that other people can see, and we can work toward a solution on that. If someone hurts my feelings, I can't pull my feel out of my body and say, see, this is where you hurt me. And that, because it is a lot less tangible, we can get into spaces of boundary violations and invalidating, so continuing a boundary violation because we can't see what it is necessarily we've done, or because we know our intent and we know that we didn't mean it that way. Then we can sort of double down. If you watch any kind of reality TV and then you see some follow-ups, you know that there's lots of people who will double down and say, no, I don't regret it. No, that's not what it was, and I didn't mean it that way. So anyway, we've all doubled down at some point in our lives. So when we're talking about those other kinds of boundaries, they might be biographical boundaries. Who gets to know your business, and who and under what circumstances can they tell your business to someone else? How much of that business can they tell, even when they do need to? So it might be something like a medical history. If you're going to surgery, maybe someone needs to give the doctor or the surgeon some of your medical history and say, hey, but they're allergic to this medication, or maybe you've had an adverse reaction to anesthesia. They need to know that. But then there's other things like, is someone depressed? Or are you concerned about them? And at what point is it okay for them to tell someone else what's going on with you? So your biographical boundary is about your story and your history and who gets to know that and have that information. When you get into things like our spiritual boundary, that's about who gets to know and understand and talk to you about your spiritual beliefs. Spiritual beliefs don't necessarily have to be religious, right? So the way I make that distinction for myself is that religious is more about rules and structure, whereas spiritual belief more about relationship and connection. So when we get into even deeper areas of our boundaries, we have our psychological boundaries. Who understands and gets to understand and gets to know about how I think, how I perceive, and what meaning I'm going to attach to certain things. This can be a little bit of a funky space because the more history we have with someone, the more we think we know them, the more we get into spaces of mind reading and assuming that we know what they were thinking and how they were thinking, or how they're going to think about something. And we tend to leave a lot less room for the fact that maybe we're wrong. And then we get into emotional boundaries, how we feel about something that's going on, and a lot of that's going to be tied to our psychological boundaries, because how we think about it is going to have is going to strongly impact how we feel about something. So Are you more guarded and maybe you don't tend to talk about how you feel about something? Or maybe there's certain emotions that you're okay with sharing, but other ones that you're not very willing to talk about. And how do you make that decision? How do you know if a person is safe to share your feelings with, and how you think with, and what makes someone unsafe? How do you let someone earn your trust? How do you not? So because I like to have a visual representation of these things that can be very vague and gray area, I like to use this handy dandy ball. Get it nice and centered there. So with using this, I'm going to introduce you to 3 different people, and this is how it was taught to me. I loved it. I love it, so I kept it. So we can be very wide open. This is Sad Sally. Sad Sally does not have very many boundaries, so our boundaries can be for protection and for containment. So if she doesn't have much protection, so all of this stuff that's happening outside can come in. So if what's going on outside of Sad Sally is great and fantastic, and someone's like, Sad Sally, you're amazing, and I love you so much, and rainbows and sunshine fly out of your booty, then that's going to come in. It's going to be very personal. And Sad Sally, maybe she isn't so sad. Maybe she's really happy and saying, ooh, I rock. I'm having a great day. But what happens if someone says, Sad Sally, you suck? That's going to come in too, and that's going to ruin Sad Sally's day. So we have to think in terms of the fact that Sad Sally, if you follow DBT, is probably very much going to be in her emotional mind. There's going to be a lot of rigid thinking, but it's also going to be impulsive reaction that's based off of whatever happens to be changing in the environment. So just like it's going to be painful for Sad Sally, there's also, since there's a lack of protection, there's also this lack of containment. So whatever is going on inside of Sad Sally is going to come flying out. So it can also be very painful to be around Sad Sally, because if Sad Sally's in a good mood, great, because it might be pretty easy and maybe you get excited because of that transactional nature of emotions. But if Sad Sally's having a rough day and she's upset, watch out, because you're going to catch that too. Right? Because again, lack of containment. So no one stays in this space perpetually. A lot of people might be in it for a lot of the times, but when it becomes too painful, both to yourself and to the people around you, we're going to clamp down. And then we go into the space of walled off Wally. Walled off Wally, still super rigid, just like Sad Sally, but so super protected that nothing is getting in and nothing is coming out, or very little is coming out. So there's so much protection and so much containment that when we're in this walled off Wally space, we might be ignoring people or ghosting. We might just go behind that wall of fine. And fine can be a very dangerous word, because there's at least 14 different meanings based off of my tone and facial expression. So we can fine. How's your day? I'm fine. It was fine. I'm good. But maybe we're not really good. We can go behind a wall of anger, a wall of humor. There's all kinds of ways that we can put up barriers to being emotionally connected to people. So just because we might be in this walled off Wally space does not mean that we're not feeling anything. And it doesn't mean that nothing's building up. So resentment can be building up, anger can be building up, and what happens after a while is, pow, we explode again. And then we just tend to overcorrect back and forth between walled off Wally and Sad Sally, being very rigid in all of the different ways that we might show up. And with some people, we might be super walled off and we might just tend to go into that default walled off Wally space. And with some people, we might just pow right here and default to the Sad Sally space. So where do we want to be? Where is the most adaptive space, the most healthy and functional space? That space is going to be somewhere in the middle. So with some people, we might still need to be more protected and more guarded, but we're not shut down all the way. So we can still let some things out. We can still let some things in. With some people, we might be more open because it's safer to be that way, but we still have some protection. We still have some containment. So we're just sort of fluctuating between these spaces depending on what's going on, what's the nature of the relationship. But the cool thing here is that we have some flexibility. We can take some pressure and bounce back, take some pressure and bounce back. That is our boundaries Bob space, or I've also heard it called Healthy Henry. It really doesn't matter. I like a boundaries Bob. That's how I was trained on it. And when we're thinking about those boundaries, it's really about how do you take the information in? How do you filter it through your wise mind? And how do you let the information out? So a lot of that is going to come down to trust, not only in yourself, but trust in other people. So as we go through this relationship series, hopefully it'll make a lot more sense. And thank you for joining, and I hope you stay tuned. Bye, lovely humans.